Hello! I decided to try something a bit different today. I wanted to see if I could recreate a The Sims 4 building in The Sims 2. So I found this really nice modern building done by Aveline on YouTube. She is an amazing The Sims 4 creator, and if you haven't checked her videos out before, I really recommend them. She is really good at building. So The Sims 2 has been out for a long time, but I still find things that I didn't knew about and learn new things. So I'm excited to see if there are things in The Sims 4 that I can learn and implement in my buildings in The Sims 2. Now I do have a lot of custom content, so I think that is going to help me out quite a bit. But other than that, The Sims 2 has a lot of great building tools, and if you just show the game a bit of love, it will give you something amazing in the end, I think. So let's see how I manage. So I'm starting off by sort of mapping out where Aveline's building begins and ends. And it's a really interesting floor plan, I think, if you just look at it this way. So I'm starting with this bit that is just a wall that goes out in the front. And to create this in The Sims 2, you have to use the constrained floor elevation cheat. So what I did is that I activated it, and then I used the ground flattening tool to flatten that wall down to the foundation level, which is 4 clicks if you use the terrain tool. And then you can just place walls normally on top of that. So it's sort of creating a foundation, but with a wall instead. Then I'm adding the floor tiles to the roof to make sure that there is an inner roof inside of the building as well. And then I started on the roof itself. Now, Aveline created something really interesting in this regard. She made this sort of outcropping, I guess, where there is no roof and then a roof a bit further in. So I'm once again using the constrained floor elevation cheat here to lower that sort of outsticking part, or what I should call it, to be level with the diagonal or triangular shapes of the roof. And then you have to remove the thing that you created again. And yeah, this is why you need to turn the sheet off before you start deleting things. There we go. So when you remove them again, it won't destroy the shape of the house. Yeah, so that went well, I think. It went surprisingly well. And then you see that sometimes when you use that trick, the grid disappears. So if you turn the sheet on again and just place down a couple of floor tiles, the grid will return. So you can place down walls and things again. So I have these diagonal windows that I wanted to use, and I thought at first that I needed to put them on wall tiles for them to work, but then I realized that no, I don't think that I do need to do that. So instead I created this sort of roof with empty spots, and then I used the snap objects to grid false cheat to place them down where I wanted them. I couldn't place another roof on top of them though, so I had to fiddle a bit with them back and forth. I also realized that in Aveline's build you couldn't see the entire glass part of them on that side of the roof, so I recreated that by placing down another diagonal roof tile next to them. And I think that it turned out really well. One issue that I figured that I needed to fix though was that when you are inside of the house, you want to be able to look up through the window. And the way that I fixed that was that I used these invisible floor tiles, and then I placed it down first on the roof and then also on the inner roof to be able to look up. So then when you put the walls up and go into camera mode, you can actually see out through the windows. And you won't have the issue with Sims getting rain and snow inside of the house. that might be an issue if you don't do that trick. So now I started to place down the driveway, and I realized that I have scooted the lot a bit to the left, so I went out of the game and used the lot adjuster tool to move the lot one tile to the right. And that is the only way that you can place foundations and walls that close to the lot edge, by the way. You can only place them down normally 2 tiles from the edge normally. But using that tool, you can make the impossible possible. Yes, so I'm starting to place down some roof colors. Aveline has used a lot of interesting patterns for her building, so I think that I have a lot to learn from that. I usually just make my houses like one color all the way around, but choosing these different kind of patterns and textures and things make things very interesting. So yeah, I had these modern windows and doors that I think matched quite well, but I couldn't find anything that looked quite similar to the front door she used for the kitchen. So I went for something that had sort of the right feel to it, but it doesn't really look anything like her building. So yeah, recoloring the steps one by one that you have to do in The Sims 2 if you want to change them. And then I tried to put down these pillars on the sides, and I had a bit of trouble making them stick where I wanted them. I think I might have been able to put them on OMSPs though, if I had fiddled around with it a bit more, so perhaps that is something that I can try for future builds. But I think that this looked quite good in the end anyway. And then I tried to find the perfect floor tile for this sort of, I'm not sure what it is, but some sort of wooden pillar on the side there. It looks a little bit like a chimney, I think, and yet not. And yeah, here I just placed down the hedges, and if you want to play a lot like this, you won't be able to trim them once they become overgrown, so that's one of the downsides to placing them like that. And as you can see, I realized once again that I had made the lot too small because I couldn't place down the pool where I wanted it. So I went into the lot adjuster tool again and made it a bit smaller. Larger. And I also realized that I had made it a little bit too far back because I was missing one tile at the back, and I think that I had one tile too many at the front. I think that I became a bit confused by the fact that I couldn't make the same sort of staircases up to the building that Aveline used in her speed build, so that is something that is different for this building. And now I'm moving into the interior of the house. Or well, I thought anyway. Apparently I made this sort of elevated deck, I guess it is. And yeah, I found finally these staircases that had the matching recolor that I could use. And then I started on the doors. I had a little bit of trouble with this as well because it needed to be a flat door, but also with the sort of correct color on the wood. But I think that this one, I think it's from Teenage Stuff, a stuff pack from The Sims 2. It worked quite well. I also decided to not make a split level for this building. I've been trying to fiddle around a little bit with the height, and I've had some issues making things lower than 4 clicks. So I think that if I wanted to make this a split level, it would look a little bit odd with that high an elevation. So that is something that I might experiment with for future buildings. But for this sort of small building, I don't think it was necessary, really. I think it looks really good without that split level as well. And now I'm moving on to the interior of the build. And I think that Aveline's build really looks amazing, with the kitchen especially. So mine looks a bit different, because of course I couldn't copy everything, but I think it captured the essence of her building anyway. I made it all white. I think that was the closest I could get, although she had a lot of wood details in her kitchen. So I found this sort of shelf thing, and I used the snap objects to grid false sheet again to scoot it so that it was a bit closer to the wall, but yet not poking out at the back. And I think that recreated what she had done quite well. Yeah, so one thing that is different from The Sims 4 is that in The Sims 2 you can't put down sinks on islands. So I started by trying to recreate this sort of, island combined with the counters, but it ended up being too wide. So I decided to forego that and just place the sink next to the stove instead. So that is one of the limitations that I couldn't fix for this build. Because, well, of course I could have placed down the chairs anyway, but then the Sims wouldn't have been able to use it, and somehow it just rubs me the wrong way to know that the things that I create can't be used. So I went for function over exact replica. I also tried out that coffee machine on the quarter tile, and apparently the Sims thought that the counters were in the way when they tried to use it. So you might be able to get it to work, I guess, if you place it on a walkthrough block. But I'm not sure. I don't think I've tried to use the coffee machine on the diagonal before. So it might not work, but yeah, one can always try. And yeah, I tried to find some decorations that looked similar to what Aveline had used in her building, and I couldn't find a nice box that made sense in the kitchen, so I decided to just place down some bowls instead. And yeah, here I am starting on trying to create nice lighting for the kitchen. So I use the wall lights and shift them up and down to get them where I want them. And then I also found this nice umbrella stand that I could place down. I wasn't sure about what Aveline had used on top of her dining tables as for lights. So I had to go back and forth a bit in her video and see. Turns out that she only used that sort of spotlight, at least I think so. So that's what I used. And yeah, placed down some plants as well. And then I tried to find a nice painting to use. The first one I picked out was a bit big, so I made it a bit smaller. And then I move on to the bathroom. Now this is a very small bathroom, but everything is usable in here. There will be no routing issues. I have tried it out. I also think that the window that I used in this room is a bit lower than the one that Aveline used. So once I started to place the shelves, I had to get a bit creative with the placement of those because it looked a bit odd otherwise. but I think it looks nice in the end. And yeah, I use these OMSPs that are already the correct height for counters, I think it is, to place down the soap and toothbrushes. And then I put up some decorations on the shelves themselves. And yeah, that one I had to remove and then add back once I had put down the decorations on it. Then I try to find something to use in this space. I have quite a bit of small counters that I can use, but I ended up using this one. I think the coloring looked nice. And then I spent some time trying to find a nice sort of muted colored vase of flowers to use, and I ended up using those cattails. I think that those were the most similar ones. And here I start to try to get a bit creative. I created this sort of TV furniture using things that are normally used for kitchens. And it turned out that I could shift the wall counters down to floor height. However, you will see this a bit more clearly once I turn the lights off, but I use a really, really amazing lighting mod. And when you turn the lights off, you will have some issues with the shadows. Those counters will turn almost completely black once the lights come off. So yeah, you will see that a bit later. And yeah, of course, in The Sims 2, we've had this sort of modular sofas for a long time. These are really nice custom ones. I ended up having to use a smaller sofa table, though, or coffee table, because I don't think that the Sims would be able to use the sofa otherwise, unfortunately. I play tested this lot, and they can use it when the coffee table is standing in that position, because they will sort of sit down on the part of the sofa that is the furthest to the right, the one that's sticking out, and then they will scoot themselves to the side to get in position. So yeah, it definitely is usable. And then I tried to find some paintings for the wall that matched the ones that Aveline had used, and I ended up using these ones. And since I didn't have anything that matched exactly, I decided to get a bit creative with it, since this is an apartment for a single mother and her child. I decided to make it a bit cuter. And then I started on the mother's bedroom. So I couldn't find a bedding that was a nice hue of pink, so I decided to instead use one of Jonis's bed blankets. They are really amazing. I mean, if you haven't used them already in your builds, I really recommend those. They are so versatile, and they really transform the bedding. And yeah, we have the lights on the OMSPs, and then I put down the alarm clock and the book on the table themselves. And then I got creative with the paintings again. I took some creative liberties with this one, but I just thought that these looked really amazing in this room, so. And then I started on the sort of office part. And yeah, I think it ended up being not exactly similar. Well, similar it is, but not exactly the same looking. So I got a bit creative with this as well. I didn't know what to put on that corner there, so I just decided to put in a teapot and a tray. I thought it looked a bit more lived in that way. And I couldn't find a nice bookshelf that had everything that I wanted, so I put down an empty one and started to place down decorative objects in it. The radio you can actually use, so I think that's neat. And yeah, here I create a sort of improvised custom wardrobe as well. It looked really, really good, I think, in daylight. But as you might guess, with my lighting mod, the shadows really became interesting for this. You'll see that a bit later. But yeah, I actually was surprised how much you can do with this in The Sims 2 as well. So if you use the Maxis Lightning, you will not have the issue with the shadows, I think. So strongly recommend trying this out and see what you can make of it. Thinking back, I might have been able to put in some lower dressers in there instead of those wall cabinets. That way I would have been able to actually use this furniture as what it's intended to be, a wardrobe. So if I try this again, I think that I would do that instead. And then I moved back to the living room because I realized that I had missed some kids' toys. And I had also missed a few curtains in here, so I went back and forth doing that as well. I couldn't find the exact matching blinds that Aveline had used, so I just picked up my favorite ones. And yeah, we move on to the kids' room, and this is a really amazing custom bunk bed that matches one of the base game, The Sims beds. Well, not base game, I think it's like IKEA stuff, maybe. And then I placed down a desk. Unfortunately, I didn't consider that this was a Maxis one, not a custom one. So unfortunately, the way that I placed it down, the Sims can't actually use it. And I only realized that once I had started to playtest a lot. So yeah, I failed a bit with that one. So if I would start to use this lot for gameplay, I would remove that desk and instead put down a custom one to make sure that the kids would be able to actually use it. I might go with the same one that I used for the mother's bedroom, because that has the desk space on the correct side of it. Maxis had the default side be the right side of the desk, so the side that I have placed down the chair on right now is only to be used for decorative things. So the chair will actually not scoot in once you start playing. So yeah, that was a bummer. I fiddled around a bit more with the colors on the walls. I realized that I had put down a bit more blue than I needed to. And yeah, here are the shadows that I told you about. I tried to fiddle around a bit with the lights to correct it, but I couldn't make it work, so I just ignored it since it looks good in daylight anyway. And then I moved on to the backyard. I'm not sure what it's supposed to be for the ground in Aveline's build. I think it looked a bit like orange dirt, perhaps, but I sort of translated it into park bark. I thought that that looked really nice for these types of things. And yeah, this made me cackle a bit maniacally because I tried a few things out and I realized that, oh my god, I can put down trees on OMSPs. I didn't know I could do that. So I ended up putting down an empty planting pot and using an OMSP to put in a tree inside of it. So yeah, I'm going to start using that. I love how I find these things out by just trying things out. It's really fun. Yeah, and then I move on to the decorations or the plants around the house. I noticed that the Sims 4 builders do this a lot, but they seem to use the same 4 or 5 different kinds of plants all around the house. It looks really cohesive and nice that way, I think, although I don't think I've ever seen that done in real life. So it looks nice for photos, but if you want something more realistic, I think that I wouldn't choose to do that. And then I put down these lights, and turns out that the car wasn't usable with the ones that are right next to the doors, so I had to actually remove those before starting to playtest this. But yeah, this is the finished result. This is what the house ended up looking like, and I think it actually turned out to be very similar to the one in The Sims 4, so I was very happy with it. So yeah, this is the end of the video. We will soon move on to the screenshots. I hope you liked this video, and thank you for watching. Take care. Bye.